It's been a month since I've brought 10 new makeup products into my chopping block, and I've had a couple of weeks to work with all of them to gather my thoughts and just finalize whether or not they make sense in my collection. Concentrating on all of these products has been very eye-opening. I've learned a lot about their formulas and how I like to wear them. So I'm just gonna jump right in. I'll have demos throughout the video so you can see what they look like on, and the majority of these products I am wearing on my face today. I'll start with the Urban Decay Face Bond Foundation. I have the shade Too Fair Neutral. I did receive this in PR. You'll see in the demo it's very light when you put it on. I think it matches me really well, but I am at my palest. It is the middle of winter right now. Keep in mind, I do mix a little bit of a green color corrector into all of my foundations. I do that mostly to reduce the amount of redness that's visible on my face. I tried to show what it looks like in natural sunlight and with my ring light. The ring light, I look like a ghost, but that is kind of what my natural skin tone is right now. I don't really think that's the foundation's fault. But when foundations are more full coverage like this one, it does blank me out. Which I don't have a problem with because I'm usually bringing life back into my face later on with bronzer and blush and stuff like that. So it kind of looks a little drastic at the beginning, and then over time, as I work it in with the sponge and apply other products, it does look like my skin again. Definitely a more full coverage foundation. Definitely does give more of a matte finish. Not too matte of a finish where it looks like I've powdered, but definitely more matte than like a soft matte or a satin matte. And for the sake of the demo, I didn't use a primer or a setting spray today so that you could get a better idea of how the foundation and the powders I'm going to talk about later work. I like this foundation. I'm glad I tried it. I do prefer matte foundations, and I like having some full coverage options in my collection to mix with other foundations in order to add a little bit more coverage. And the fact that this is a little bit lighter does make it a good mixer with some foundations that are maybe a little too deep for me. The longevity is good. It's pretty on par with other foundations that I have in my collection. Keep in mind, my skin does get very oily throughout the day, and so that's kind of always something that foundations are having to fight. I do have some breakouts on my chin currently. It did a good job at reducing the redness around those areas. It's full coverage enough to kind of help smooth over that area without clinging to any dry patches or making that section of my face look extra textured. Extra textured, that's a fun phrase. The next one is also one that I really enjoyed. I'm so glad I took the time to test it out because I really wasn't sure about it at first. That's the AOA I Love Dew Blush Drops in the shade Dolly. This reminds me so much of those Stila watercolor blushes that came out a long time ago. I really liked mine, but I was annoyed because I felt like I went through it really quickly. It seemed to dry up pretty fast, and it was very expensive, versus this one is a lot more affordable. I think it only is a couple of dollars. I really like the color. It's kind of got a little bit of a purple pink to it. I used the back of my hand to put some drops on, and then I applied it with a stipple brush. That's my favorite way to apply it. I think that's the best way to get like a really translucent, almost a watercolor effect on the cheeks. And even though this is a really light shade, I am able to get enough to create a flush on my skin. You can put it on with a sponge, but because it's so watery, it does get soaked up really quickly, and you have to use a lot more product to do that. I've tried using my fingers and it just took forever to build up. I had to go back like 3 or 4 times to build it up enough to get some pigment. So I think the stipple brush method is the best and fastest way to do that. With it being so watery, it doesn't really play well with other products in my collection. If I wanted to mix this with like a liquid highlight or something like that, it doesn't really mix well with it. It is very watery. I don't mind that. I think it still looks really beautiful, and it's one of those products that just looks very undetectable on the skin. If I were doing makeup on someone for like, you know, a TV show or something, not that I'm a professional makeup artist, but if I was doing makeup on someone and I wanted to look like they had a really natural flush without actually wearing any makeup, I would use something like this. This Smashbox concealer I also received in PR. It's the Healthy Glow 4-in-1 Perfecting Pen, and I like concealer pens like this. I didn't think I'd have a problem with it, except for they sent shades that are much too deep for me. I thought maybe I could still salvage it by using it as a cream bronzer, and no, absolutely not. This is more of a warm, almost orange undertone, and it is a lot deeper than my skin. And when I apply it as a cream bronzer, it's just way too warm on my skin tone. Instead, I've been using it as a mixer with some other cream blushes. that I want to add a little bit of warmth to. I think it's fine for that. I think I'll just continue using it in that way. The formula is nice. It's not too thick. I can't really speak on the coverage or what it looks like on the under eyes because it's not the right shade for me to use it in that way. I found an alternative way to work with this, but I really can't say whether or not I would go out and purchase my own shade in this. Next up, I have two loose powders that are really new in my collection. The first one is from Fenty Beauty, and it's the Pro Filter Instant Retouch Setting Powder in the shade 01 Lavender. This is a really light, almost white powder with a bit of a lavender violet tone to it. I did use this to set my whole face. It's very brightening, which I don't always need help with. So it's not ideal for that, but it is wonderful for the under eyes. I use a puff to apply it. I've used brushes as well, and it worked perfectly fine. I typically use this e.l.f. small taper brush to set my under eyes with powder, and I used this with the powder and it worked fine, but the way I prefer to apply it, and the other powder I'm going to talk about in a minute, is with a velour puff. I have this one from e.l.f. and I've just really been loving using this to set my face. I find I need to use less powder. I'm not caking up as much of the loose powder in the air and potentially breathing it in. And I'm really able to press it into all of the crevices of my face so that I feel fully set without looking too makeup-y. I do prefer more of a matte finish with a few spots on my face that are more glowy, just because, like I said, I do get oily throughout the day. I don't really need things to be super dewy right off the bat. This is beautiful. It's brightening without being too unnatural. I also love how it smells. I mentioned that it kind of smells like Dior's Hypnotic Poison in my first chopping block video where I introduced this product. And I'm glad to have something like this because the Besame Violet powder that I typically use to set my under eye concealer has been out of stock for quite some time, and I'm not sure when I'm going to be able to get more of it. I already have a pretty big pan on the Besame powder and it's constantly out of stock. I haven't been able to get my hands on a new one, so I'm glad to have this to use in its place. And with only using it under my eyes, there's a ton of product in here. There's 28 grams of product, so it's likely that this is a better value than this one anyway. Here's a comparison of the two. They're very faint, so it's going to be kind of hard to see, but this is the Besame Violet powder over here, and this is the lavender powder from Fenty. They're really, really similar, so I'm glad to have something to kind of take this Besame powder's place once this is gone. The other powder is this Velvet Finishing Powder from Nakia Joy Cosmetics. For a long time, I've heard people say that this is a great powder for people who have oily skin. I've had my eye on it. I was kind of waiting for it to go on sale, and then I heard, I think it was Erin Taylor, mentioned that they were gonna have a holiday sale, so I went and got it when it was 30% off. It has a slight yellow tint to it, but I would say it is relatively translucent on my skin tone. I did use a brush to apply it, and I think I applied a little too much at first, and once I started using less, I realized that it doesn't look that heavy on my skin, and I liked it a lot better. And then once I started using the velour puff, that's where the real magic happened. I love it. Using it with that velour puff really sets my face and helps it look set without looking super cakey or like I have a million pounds of makeup on my face. It's also really easy to touch up with after a few hours if I get a little bit glowy in some spots where I don't want to be glowy. I have yet to find a powder that can keep me from getting glowy all day. I just don't know if that's even possible, honestly. This is a really great contender though. I'm so glad I tried this. Next up is this mini bronzer from Hourglass. It's in Diffused Bronze Light. I moved in a little bit closer because the sun is starting to creep in at a weird angle and leave lines on my face. In my most recent chopping block video, I mentioned that I wanted to see if this would be a winter bronzer or a summer bronzer for me. I think this makes a really nice winter bronzer. I use this fluffy e.l.f. brush. It's small enough to get enough product on my brush from the pan, but it's soft enough to properly diffuse it so I'm not depositing too much bronzer anywhere. You definitely can build this up, but it is a softer powder, very in line with other Hourglass powders that I've tried. It does have a subtle glow to it, but I wouldn't say that there's large glitter particles or anything noticeable, especially if you use a fluffier brush like this to put it on. I'm in a mood right now where I'm wearing so little bronzer that this was really nice because it's a very soft application. However, Hourglass powders are not cheap. I've really been enjoying this. I think this will be a great travel size powder too because it's so small. I have a few products here from Wonderskin. These were all received in PR, and I just really hadn't given them a chance and tested them out to see if I liked them or not. The first two products are eyeshadow sticks. I have one in champagne and one in mink. I'll start with the one that I like better of the two. Mink is a beautiful matte taupe shade, and I did wear this on my eyes. It's very subtle. When you blend it out, it kind of lightens up quite a bit. I like that it does lighten up a little bit though, because I don't really benefit from having super dark eyeshadow all around my eyes. And then I can put this down and then build up other shadows on top of it to create a softer smoky eye. To be honest though, I don't wear it on my eyes that often. I actually love using this in my eyebrows, and that's how I used it in my demo today. This formula is not creamy, it's almost wet. When you first apply it, you can feel it is a little bit cooling because it's got a liquid aspect to it. And then it dries. Again, it feels creamy as you're putting it on, but it doesn't have a creamy finish. Like, it sets and then it stays. I love it. I think it's a really great match for my hair. I have both elements of cool and warmth in my hair depending on what light I'm in, and this does a really good job of matching that without looking like my eyebrows are overtly done. And it doesn't feel like there's anything in my brows. I don't really like when they feel really crunchy. As for the champagne shade, you'll see in the demo, because it is so liquidy, as I'm applying it, it kind of picks up the eyeshadow primer and any powder that I have on my eyelid already, and that makes it look really patchy. It's also not very pigmented to cover up that patchiness, so I don't really like wearing this on its own. The way I've been using this is I like to press some on my finger pad and then press it onto my lid. I find that I get the least amount of disturbance of the products underneath that way. And then I usually pat on another sparkly shade on top. And the sparkles in the champagne mixed with whatever eyeshadow I pair it with does create a really beautiful scattered effect. I did try to use it as a liquid highlighter, and again, with it being more wet and then drying down, it's like the perfect formula for that. But it does have a lot of sparkle to it. It has a lot of glitter, and I don't really like that on my cheekbones. If this were more of a satin formula that didn't have those large pieces of glitter, then I think it would be a really beautiful glowy cheek product, especially for someone like me who doesn't like thick, oily feeling cheek products. I like them to set down. I think I would like it a lot better, but because it has those sparkles, I've been using it almost as like a, whatever the opposite of a topper is, just like a glittery base to put other glittery shades on top of. So I'd say I prefer the matte over the shimmer formula for these sticks. As for the eyeliner, I have the Longwear eyeliner in the shade Olive. I think this is beautiful. It's really creamy and easy to blend, and then it eventually sets down. With this color, you can do a really light layer and blend it in for some natural definition, but you can also build it up to have more of a actual line. It doesn't look very green on my eyes. I think it's incredibly subtle, and if someone were to see me in person, they would likely think I'm wearing a black or a brown liner. So I think that subtlety in the green tone of it is something that I just noticed myself, and that's fine. It's a really beautiful liner. I enjoy wearing it, but if you're looking for something that's gonna look very green on your eyes, this is probably not the shade to go for. And lastly, for the most disappointing product, I have this Bloom Blush and Glow palette from Natasha Denona. I always get so tempted by these face palettes. They're so beautiful, and I just love the colors. The cream blushes are really pretty. So this lighter one is very subtle. I like mixing it with other blushes too. It's peachy with a light gold sheen. It's really pretty. And then this red blush here does not actually pull red on my cheeks. When I first put it on, I was surprised to see how purpley pink it was instead. And this is incredibly pigmented. Just taking the tiniest little bit with the back of my fingernail and mixing with anything just completely transforms the color and makes it 10 times more pigmented. So definitely one that I have to proceed with caution with, but still gorgeous. Wonderful for when I am going for more of a blushy, flushed look. So the creams I have no problem with. However, the powders are incredibly glittery. You'll see when I apply that blush today, the gold sheen on this blush is just so noticeable. And when you see me in person, you can see that I have like something very unnatural on my cheeks. I might even go as far to say that it slightly emphasizes the texture on my face as well. And that might be because it is a very golden sheen, which isn't like a very natural color for me. I do like the base color. It's a beautiful peach pink, but that gold shift is just very very metallic, which is not really what I'm going for on my cheeks. And the same could be said even more for the highlighter side. The sheen, the glitter, the chunkiness is even more apparent on this side. Almost to the point where it would make a prettier eyeshadow than it would a highlighter. So that's kind of unfortunate. These are not favorite powder blushes or highlighters for me. They're just gonna have to be relegated to be toppers or products that I wear when I don't have a problem looking extra made up that way. So I am gonna keep all 10 of those products, some with more success or more appreciation than others. Like, I have really come to love that Wonderskin Mink shade, and the two loose powders. The Natasha Denona face palette is not a favorite, but still worth keeping. Now let me quickly introduce the next 10 products that I want to incorporate into a chopping block. I have this primer here from Jason Wu. It's the Magic Spell Potion 5. It's a really light pink color, and it's very gel-like. It's just a clear, translucent, very lightweight, watery formula. I've worn it twice already, and I'm very impressed so far. What I like about it is as you blend it in, there is a very slight creamy feeling to it, so it's not just a straight up gel that evaporates and doesn't feel like anything. It feels incredibly light, but still feels like I did something, so that's good. I've had this primer for probably over a year now and haven't really touched it, so that's not good. And then I have another foundation to bring in. This is the AOA Studio CC Cream in the shade Fair. This was a gift from my friend Sarah Rose. This has a thicker, creamier feel than the Urban Decay foundation, and when you blend it out, it seems to be a relatively decent match for me, maybe a little darker than I typically go for, but it feels nice, and I'd like to just test it out some more. And then I also have this setting spray from AOA Studio that I purchased, I think at the beginning of last year. It's the Flawless Matte Setting Spray. I don't think I've used this yet, and I'd like to test it out. The sun's coming in really strong, so I gotta hurry up. I have one cheek product. This is the Vive blush in the shade Cherub. This is a really beautiful blush, but I often ignore it or avoid it because it's incredibly pigmented. I have to be really careful not to over apply. But this is a really beautiful time of year to wear this sort of color, so I'd like to pull it out just to wear it some more. There was a point in time where I almost decluttered it because it was so pigmented, and I'd like to just give it some more attention right now to see if it's worth keeping. I have one face powder here. This is from Wonderskin. It's the FYP Filter Powder. I love the purple packaging, that's beautiful. And this is just a white translucent powder. I've worn white translucent pressed powders before and really enjoyed them. It feels really nice and lightweight. It kind of reminds me of the one from Tarte, which is a favorite, which I really like. So I feel good about it. I assume I'm gonna like it because I like products like this, but I haven't actually had a chance to test it out. I have two more of those shadow sticks from Wonderskin. One is in the shade Green Smoke. It's a really dark green color. And then the other shade is Ash, which is more of a sooty shade. These both look like they're gonna be more satin matte formulas, which I do prefer over the glittery shade that Champagne is. So yeah, I'd like to just work with these a little bit more and make sure that they're worth keeping. I also have a brow stain from Wonderskin in the shade Blonde, and I have worn this quite a few times and I really like it. It's just one of those products that I forget to put on because I need to put it on before I do the rest of my face, and I don't typically do my brows until closer to the end. So I skip over it, completely forgetting, and then by the time I remember, it's too late. So I just want to reach for this more because I really like it, and I need to put it in a project like this to give it more love. And then I have an eyeliner here. This is from Make Beauty in the shade Eclipse, which is a black color, and I got this as a gift with purchase forever ago. One thing I don't like is the top is sometimes really hard to get off. I've also noticed that this feels a lot drier than it used to, so I think it might be just drying up altogether. I'd like to focus on it a little bit more to see if I can continue making it work or if it's just so dried out that it's beyond repair. I might need to shave off a little bit of that top layer in order to get to a creamier part of the pencil. But yeah, I'd like to just figure that out over the next couple of weeks. And the very last one is a lip stain from Satchu. I got this in PR, and what really stuck out to me about this shade is that it's a very purple color. It's in the shade Plumped. I think that purple color is gonna make a beautiful lip stain. I also wanna try to use it as a blush too. I see good things all the time about this product, and this is a shade that I received that I was really interested in trying, so I wanna bring it into this chopping block. So those are my thoughts on the 10 products I had in my chopping block and the 10 new ones that I'm bringing in. This is kind of my version of an everyday makeup drawer or shop my stash. As much as I like doing those other types of videos, I have a lot of trouble keeping up with them. But in the meantime, that's everything I have. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and I'll see you in my next video.